Hey, good morning again, everyone. It's a little bit past 10, so I want to be mindful of everyone's time. We'll get started with today's program. So to begin, my name is Raquel Pinto, the Procurement Contracts Manager, leading the effort that you'll be hearing with today. So first, I want to thank you by taking time out of your day to hear about this opportunity. We're very excited about all the interest we've been hearing for the AirTrain Newark replacement program specific to the stations and Guideway procurement. As you may well know, that this opportunity is for the design and construction through a design build model for the procurement opportunity that we have set forth. We have a very good program with various panelists to go through the overall project overview and some key points that we hope we would then see you as interest in the official procurement moving forward. With that, we're going to be issuing the forthcoming request for qualifications this afternoon following today's briefing. So that way, the goal is to provide you with an overview of the goals, the program, and the timeline. So that way, we hope to see you submit statements of qualification throughout this process and continuing on. But with that, again, welcome. Thank you so much again for your interest. We hope that you find this very helpful throughout the presentation. And with that, we'd like to officially begin. But with that, just a few housekeeping items I'd like to walk you all through first, just so you have the lay of the land of how we intend to proceed with today's presentation. With that, as you could see that your voice as attendance, your voice in video is disabled. You will only be seeing and hearing from the panelists today as they are speaking and presenting at their portion of today's industry outreach. Also of note that today's industry briefing is being recorded, just so you're all aware. Later today, we will be posting that recording. It'll be along with the presentation, and you'll see the presenters on there as well. That way, in case you've joined late or missed anything, you can always reference that later today, and it'll be posted on the procurement website for the Port Authority under Alternative Project Delivery Group, but just so that way you're aware. As already mentioned, that this afternoon at about 2 p.m., we will be issuing the request for qualifications, again, for the design build opportunity specific to the stations and Guideway for AirTrain Newark. Again, about 2 p.m. Along with the posting of the request for qualifications, you also see posted the design build agreement in draft form that we'll be posting with that, today's video recording, the presentation today as well, so you can reference in the future if you have any questions. And lastly, we'll also be posting today's attendee list. That way, in case anyone is interested in making any partnerships, you can review and see other interested parties that have joined today's session. With that, all the information we'll be placing, do you want to let you all know that this is going to be an issue briefing to the market of the updates, and we will not be having a question and answer period. Part of that reason is that you'll see in the request for qualifications is that there's a process to send in questions that'll be directly to myself. I'll have my contact information at the end of today's presentation. So please feel free to send any and all questions over to myself. How we take those on is once we receive questions, we then answer them publicly. We want to try to be as transparent as possible. And so for those who can make today's session to answer questions, we want to have that all in written form so everyone receives the information at the same time. So that will answer any questions, but we do want to get you the information that you need through this process. And again, as mentioned, today's attendee list will be posted along with the additional other information relative to the request for qualifications, so they'll have that viewing. I will be emailing all attendees later today once everything's posted with the link, so don't have to fear you'll have that information as soon as it's available on our website later today. But along with me, I have the pleasure of introducing our presenters for today. Along with me, we have Ralph DePuzzo, the Program Director for the AirTrain Newark Replacement Program, Andrew Smith with our outside counsel at Ashurst as a partner over at Ashurst, as well as Glenessa Gordon, our Assistant Director with the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So you'll be hearing from all four of us today as we continue today's discussion. And what we'll be discussing in today's agenda, again, as long as the speakers are four key items about the project overview, some of the scope items, technical information, and how this portion of the project for the Guideway and stations ties into some of the other elements of the overall AirTrain Newark replacement program. We'll want to discuss, some of our agency's key priorities when it comes to MBE, WBE, SDVOB, and LBE goals and participation for our agency. We'll also be reviewing the key commercial and legal terms of the design build agreement. As I mentioned, that will also be provided today in draft form with the request for qualifications. And then lastly, I will return to go over the procurement process, the schedule, and some of the key details for submission should you all be interested. With that, again, welcome. Thank you again so much for your time. We look forward to hearing from you. And with that, I have the pleasure of turning it over to Ralph DePuzzo to go over our project overview. Ralph, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Aviation Redevelopment, And the Port Authority, we are very excited to advance the latest project on the road to getting a new AirTrain at Newark Airport. The following will be a brief project overview for the Guideway and Stations contract. And as noted on this slide, I'll cover each of these items listed here in the next few slides as we advance. We'll talk about.
Lead contractor, like a big civil.
Sorry, I think we have some background noise. Tim, if you can mute. Yeah. So if you could just go back to the previous slide, Raquel. Yeah. So we'll touch on the delivery model itself. We'll go through the project estimate as we see it now, our approach to the bridging documents in the package, as well as the nuts and bolts, the site, the scope, and the alignment in this contract, and how the program components of the rest of the AirTrain system will be handled, and tentative project schedule, as well as how we're dealing with interfaces between the contracts. Next slide. So we're following the design build delivery model for this project, where a successful design build team will be responsible for both the design and construction of the new Guideway and stations. We've advanced our bridging documents from the conceptual phase in the previous procurement, for those of you that have been following this, to a preliminary design level beyond 30%. And that's to aid the successful team in developing a final design. This model allows for the design build team to really bring their expertise and experience into the design and account for innovative means and methods to improve constructability and the final end product. Since this contract will build the elements that are needed by our systems technology contractor to perform their work, there'll be clear delivery milestones or project schedule milestones for turnover of Guideway and station segments to meet the overall schedule goals. And you'll see that in the documents that'll be issued later today. Next slide. So based on both internal and external input, at this point, the Port Authority is estimating the Guideway and Stations contracts total construction cost to be in the range of about $1 to $1.25 billion. This applies only to the scope of work in the Guideway and Stations contract. It's not the system technology. It's not the other package contracts. This is purely what we're talking about in this contract. Next slide. So as mentioned earlier, we're advancing the previous proof of concept plans to a preliminary design level. And these will be released to the shortlisted teams along with the RFP later on in the procurement. The contractor is not obligated to use or follow the bridging documents. However, we feel this is a good head start in developing the final design, and we hope that's how it's approached. The Port Authority will provide both cost and schedule relief, subject to certain conditions, to the contractor if it relied on the accuracy of the bridging documents for the purposes of its proposal. So we're trying to get the benefit of that investment in the advanced design. Next slide. So this is a combination of the graphic on the right, as well as highlights of the specific scope items that are in this contract. Starting with the graphic. So what we're showing here, this may be familiar to some of you. The green alignment shown on the right is the current Guideway alignment. And starting from the right side or the south side of the airport closest to New Terminal A, there'll be a new station called Station 1 that will serve the new terminal. It'll be connected to the existing pedestrian bridge. That will then allow the alignment to then continue north. And you see another red box, which is the location for future Station 2. That's closest to what we're calling the Future Terminal B development zone. And that is an area that's currently under study from a visioning standpoint. And what we're doing in this contract is to make provisions for the ability to add a station in the future, but not necessarily construct it under this contract. There is a design component that's included, and I'll get into that. The alignment then continues to the north, and there's a Station 3 located closest to the P4 garage, as well as the existing Terminal C. And this station is meant to serve the existing facilities there. The alignment then makes a turn and it mirrors alongside the existing alignment and continues over Route 1 and 9 to the west, and then back again to the north once it crosses under Haynes Avenue Bridge. And much like the existing Guideway alignment, it goes beyond the existing railing station to a new platform that's going to be built as an expansion of the existing station. That'll be our last stop. And then beyond that, the alignment will extend to the location for the new maintenance and control facility. So that's the overall program outlook. What's specifically in this contract is what you see listed to the left. So it's the design and construction of the civil infrastructure, namely the 2.5 miles of elevated guideway structure. It's 3 stations: Station 1, Station 3, railing station. And it's also a 30% design of the future Station 2 to ensure that the design of the guideway, as well as the corresponding system technology work by others, is going to be able to work with a future station at that location. And then the patron assembly areas and areas of refuge. So what do we mean by that? There's a number of areas, such as at Station 1, that will serve ECRAID amenities. It's a build out of the curb 4 at the frontages for new Terminal A that wasn't able to be completed until the station construction is done. So that's part of the AirTrain contract. There's other patron assembly areas over by the P4 garage that will also be included. And then there's really the typical restoration, pedestrian conveyances, and restoration of all roadways and parking lots as a result of the work that's conducted in order to build the new assets and bring everything back to good order, and as well as associated site work and utilities to be able to facilitate the new work. Next slide. So in order to deliver a complete operational AirTrain system, there's additional contracts that will be executed to capture the remaining program scope. And they're listed here. So the first 2 are well underway in active procurements. Starting with the early works, we expect the early works packages, which are going to be done under work orders, to be under construction in the fall of 2023. And they'll include enabling works such as utility investigations, pile load testing, crash wall adjacent to the Conrail tracks, things that we can do to de-risk and reduce the scope in the other contracts and provide more certainty. The second, the system technology and O&M contract is also well underway. We have shortlisted our APM system technology contract teams, namely Alstom, Doppelmayr, and Mitsubishi, and are on track to award the selected supplier later this year. Then the maintenance facility and the pedestrian connectors contracts will be initiating design shortly. There's a bit more time for those, and there'll be traditional design bid build contracts. Then the last one, which is the fixed facilities O&M, is going to be developed after the new facility designs are finalized and in construction, so that we know exactly what we're going to operate and maintain. And then the demolition of the existing AirTrain systems is something that's going to be done once the new system is operational. So that will be developed later on in the construction duration, but it's something that won't occur until the new system is operational and we could take the existing down. Next slide. So how long is this all going to take? It's about a 6-year period that we're looking at starting from today. The RFQ process kicks off our procurement period for this contract. We see the design. So we see the procurement period ending at a tentative award date of Q4 2024, when we give the notice to proceed for the selected DB team. And then we'll enter into the design phase, followed by the construction phase. We think that that'll essentially take from Q4 2024 to the first passenger service date, which is forecast to be Q2 2029. Obviously, there's design, there's the construction to get to substantial completion, and then there's the system-wide testing and commissioning. So there will be earlier milestones that will relate to this contract that'll be much earlier than the Q2 2029 date. But the overall system needs to be coordinated in order to meet those dates. Next slide. So interfaces. The primary interface between this package will be the system technologies contract. That'll be the closest links that we need to identify and work out. Other interfaces, such as with the maintenance facility, pedestrian connections, will be limited. There'll be tie-in points, but essentially those will be isolated and conducted in different areas. The draft design build agreement that you will be getting today contains relevant interface language between the Guideway and Stations contractor and the system technology contractor, as well as the other package contractors. This phased approach that we've adopted affords us to have the system technology supplier on board early in the process, designing before the Guideway and Stations contractor is chosen. In this way, we have the critical loadings, the equipment needs, the functional criteria finalized and incorporated already into the Guideway and Stations contract documents. The system design, obviously, as I pointed out, will precede the Guideway and Stations design, and this detailed interface information that we're getting along the way will be incorporated into the RFP for the Guideway and Stations. The DBA also addresses interface design reviews and the timing of handovers between the Guideway and Stations contractor and the other package contractors, and does provide relief in the event of delays by other package contractors. Now I'd like to turn it over to Glenn S. Gordon, our Assistant Director for the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Thank you. Thank you, Ralph. Good morning, all. I'm going to speak to you a little bit about our supplier diversity program and the specific requirements for this program. ODI's supplier diversity program helps the regions, thank you. Thanks, I forgot to say next slide. Thank you. Helps the regions MWBEs, our SDVOBs, SBEs, and DBEs participate in the Port Authority's business opportunities in all procurement types, with our tenants as well as with our redevelopment programs such as this. We believe that our operations should reflect the diversity of our community. In 2018, our board enacted the following participation goals: 20% MBE, minority business enterprise, 10% women-owned business enterprise, and later we enacted the 3% service disabled veteran-owned business goals on all of our contracts. We require our partners to embrace these goals on all procurement types and all procurement phases. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, we require our primes to commit to achieving at least 20% MBE participation, 10% WBE participation, and 3% disabled service disabled veteran-owned business participation across all of the phases of the projects, as well as various categories and various tiers. And with this being a design build project, we will look for that participation on the design aspect, as well as the construction aspect, and any categories of work, such as the A&E professional services, non-A&E professional services, and construction-related type services. We also require that firms enable utilization across in each of the MBE and WBE racial ethnic groups across all of the categories. And I'll go into this when in discussing diversity within diversity in a later slide. And next slide, please. For the types of goals that we have on our contracts, the MBE goals, when we are looking at MBE or the eligibility criteria for certification in these areas, with MBEs, they must be 51% owned and managed by a minority, or for WBE, by a woman owner, who are citizens or permanent residents of the United States. These owners must also make those critical day-to-day decisions involving the operations of the entity of the firm. They also should have made capital contributions, and that were real capital contributions, and they should be continuing for the operation. The firm should have been in business in order to be certified as an MBE for at least 1 year, and then the certification is valid for 5 years. For the SDVOBs, again, 51% owned and managed by the service disabled veteran-owned business owner. They also have to provide to the Port Authority a letter documenting their SDVOB status. They should have a principal place of business in New York or New Jersey, or a significant presence in New York or New Jersey. For the SDVOBs, they also have to indicate that they qualify for the Port Authority's SDVOB program. This is guided by the U.S. U.S. Small Business Administration Program, or the SBA program, in order to be certified as an SDVOB. Next slide, please. So the program will require a 10% local LBE, or local business enterprise goal, as well throughout the agreement, or throughout the term of the program or contract. Some of the good faith efforts to ensure or to show us that you've made a good faith effort in terms of including LBEs in the contract include prioritizing their participation in each phase, the phases that we mentioned, whether it's construction or a design or construction. Also, looking at professional services and goods and services when we're discussing or looking at the categories. They should also provide support strategies exclusive for bidding to LBEs, and help facilitate any business growth that's required for them to be successful on these programs. So with the LBEs, in terms of the priority that we look for LBEs, the first priorities for this project is firms that are located in the municipalities of Newark and Elizabeth. We see this as Zone 1. A subset of Zone 1, which is 1A, includes any municipalities that are within a 5-mile radius of the border of the airport. The second priority, or Zone 2, are those remaining counties and cities in Essex County and Union County, as well as Hudson County. The third priority, Middlesex and Bergen counties. The fourth priority is within the Port District in the state of New Jersey. The fifth priority is the Port District that's located in the state of New York. And the sixth priority is anywhere outside of the Port District. And this is outlined in the actual proposal or RFP. Next slide, please. In order throughout for these MWB, MBE, WB, and SBE goals and efforts that we look at and to determine whether the firm is making a good faith effort, one is the development of a roadmap. This shows what your plan is throughout the contract period, from design as well as construction. How you plan, which areas do you plan to use your MWBEs, and who have you identified throughout the life cycle of the project? Each prime work provider should provide a participation plan that will support this roadmap, that will support the framework for this roadmap. The plans that they provide should also show meaningful opportunities for the MWBEs in order to meet the goals. And again, across the full spectrum for each of the phases, each of the categories of work, as well as in the various contract tiers, whether it's tier 1, subcontracting tiers 2 and 3. We also encourage, as I mentioned earlier, strong LBE participation for this opportunity. The contracting packages should be in line with the availability and for the pool of MBEs, WBEs, and SDVOBs. And we also require or ask that the primes look at whether there could be joint ventures formed to meet your MWBE goals, whether there should be partnerships or other arrangements among the subcontractors that will help you meet this participation goal. Next slide, please. I mentioned having diverse firms within each of the areas, each of the categories. So in terms of the other good faith goals, we do ask the primes or require the primes to ensure that they have diversity and within diversity in all of the areas of work as well as the tiers. To demonstrate this, what we would look at as a lack of sufficient diversity, it could be that all of your MWBs in a particular category of work is from one or two minority groups, and you have not shown us a good faith effort to identify other minority groups in those particular categories. Or it could be one MBE firm and one WBE firm used in a specific category or a specific phase of work. So continuing with the other good faith efforts, again, there should be a transparent process in terms of how the firms are pre-qualified or how you select the firms in these areas. It should be clear to us as well as the MBE firms what those requirements are. Again, providing business capacity building support. That could be financial services, recommending financial services, providing training or guidance, and any other business support that's appropriate for the area of work. And last but definitely not least, on this type of, on any of the Port Authority contracts, we do ask that, or require, not ask, we require that the primes conduct their business affairs in line with the Port Authority standards, which includes our supplier code of ethics and any other protocol that's included in the contract. So now I'd like to introduce Andrew Smith, who will be reviewing the key commercial and legal terms.
Thanks, Vanessa, and good morning, everyone. Yeah, as Vanessa said, in this section, I'll just cover a few of the terms of the DBA that we wanted to highlight. So first, let's talk about contract price and payment. As you'd expect for a design build agreement, this will be a lump sum price contract with adjustments only as set out in the agreement. We intend to make monthly progress payments, which will be subject to 5% retainage. And also up to 4% of the contract price can be charged as a day one mobilization payment. The agreement will include customary prompt payment provisions for the payment of subcontractors within defined periods of time following payment by the Port Authority. And we'll also include material and equipment indexation provision. This will provide protection with respect to cost inflation of certain identified materials and equipment based on publicly available indexes. The intent is to provide for a price adjustment if the index moves up or down beyond a defined band. The draft design build agreement that will be released today doesn't yet identify the materials and equipment that will be subject to indexation, but that will be sort of updated during the RFP process based on feedback we receive. And lastly, the intention for this provision is to include optionality to allow bidders to elect whether or not to accept the provision at the time that they submit their proposal. So their pricing will either be inclusive of that provision or on the basis that it won't be included. Next, on performance security. So the requirement will be for a performance and payment bond with a value of 50% of the contract price to be provided by an eligible security issuer. And also, unless the proposed counterparty has a parent that's of or is the parent company of the group or has sufficient credit quality, then we'd also expect a parent company guarantee from each JV member. Next slide, please. Now I'll just touch on a few of the other key legal terms. Design liability and design bridging documents, undisclosed site conditions, limitation on liability, and third-party agreements. Just to run through, starting with design liability. So Ralph touched on this earlier with the bridging documents, which are the Port Authority's concept design that will be released during the RFP period. The contractor will still be responsible for final design as you would expect on a typical design build contract, and the contractor's engineer of record or architect of record will ultimately sign and seal the final documents. But the bridging documents will be provided during the RFP stage and bidders can use them if they wish. The Port Authority has verified that the bridging documents are compliant with the requirements of the agreement and wants to sort of provide that benefit to bidders. And so as Ralph mentioned, there will be relief provided in the agreement if the bridging documents are relied on as part of the proposal and later an issue is discovered during the design phase. So specifically, that means if it doesn't comply with the requirement, the technical requirements or design criteria that's set by a third party, or if they don't accommodate known site conditions. Next slide, please. So for undisclosed site conditions, we'll include sort of conventional cost and schedule protection in the event that conditions are discovered at the site that couldn't have been known about based on the available documents that will be made available during the RFP stage or otherwise anticipated. That will cover geotechnical conditions, hazardous environmental conditions, utilities, endangered species, and archaeological remains. We will not be including sort of a site validation period as a time limitation on making the claim. Next slide, please. I don't know if we might have missed one slide, Raquel. Did we cover 27? Oh, thanks, yeah. So we will include a limitation on liability. The cap on liability will be 50% of the DNC price. We'll also include a sub-cap with respect to the exposure of the contractor to delay, so specific to delay liquidated damages. And lastly, we'll include a waiver of a mutual waiver of consequential or indirect losses. Next slide, please. So lastly, just to talk about third parties and third-party agreements, the Port Authority has been engaging with other government agencies that will somehow touch the project. Those are Amtrak, Conrail, NJ Transit, and NJ DOT, just in specific areas of the project site. The ports entered into third-party agreements with each of those entities, capturing any requirements that they have or review rights. Those will be made available at RFP stage. We've also kind of continued to engage with those agencies and including having them review the bridging documents. And the agreement will provide cost and schedule protections if there is delays caused by these entities not responding not responding within agreed timeframes or any sort of additional requirements that are changed by these agencies during the process. With that, I will hand back to Raquel.
Great. Thank you very much, Andrew, and good morning again, everyone. So thank you, prior three presenters, for the overview. What I will now be discussing is the final section of the overall procurement process. So in summary, some of the key items that I'll be discussing in my portion are the request for qualifications process, the overall timeline, what the materials entail. Again, as Andrew and the rest of the team noted, that we will be issuing the request for qualifications this afternoon on our website, along with the draft design build agreement, which we're very happy to be able to share with the market in advance of the RFP stage. And again, that RFP phase will be about 6 to 8 months, but further details will be discussed later in this presentation and defined in that specific RFP. Again, we do intend for this to be a pretty standard design build model process with collaborative dialogue meetings, alternative technical concepts, and it will be a best value determination as this is a low bid contract. Additionally, I'll be walking you through the stipend amount. I'm sure everyone's very curious about the overall procurement schedule and timeline for submissions and both stages. So to begin with the overall for the request for qualifications, the goal is to identify the most qualified firms to advance to the RFP stage. Once we review the statements of qualification we receive, we will then assess them and shortlist the most qualified firms. Once this has been concluded later this year, we will be posting publicly the teams that are shortlisted to advance to the RFP stage. So especially our MWBE, SCVOB, and LB community, great time to do outreach to connect for partnerships, if not sooner during today's forum. Some of the key elements of what the expectations for the statement of qualification should have is that we require a partnership between the lead contractor and the lead designer. So for lead contractor, it could be the entity or 10 entities if it's going to be formed as a joint venture that have the substantial responsibility for the construction of the civil infrastructure. And again, it's expected to be a prime or fourth tier subcontractor retained by the contractor to take on this role. Similarly, the lead designer should be the entity or again that will take on the lead role of the design for the civil infrastructure for this project, and again can be a prime or a first tier subcontractor to take on that work. Now, when it comes to the evaluation criteria, again, all of these elements are going to be required of both the lead contractors and the lead designer. With that, we have two elements of the evaluation criteria. We have pass-fail criteria along with our comparative evaluation criteria. So the first element that the Port Authority will be assessing when we receive the qualification letters is the pass-fail criteria, of which we have several before we move forward to comparative, as this is the threshold for entering. So we have overall 5 pass-fail criteria, which contain responsiveness. Again, we do ask that you are careful in your review and that you answer all components of the request for qualifications, provide us all signatures necessary, fill out all the information, the templates, so you're responsive to the necessary elements. We have our legal components, of which we require that we want to be able to see that the entity has a legal ability to take on this work, they are in good standing, and can comply with all the requirements of the contract. For the financial element, we do require 3 years of financial statements from, again, both the lead contractor and lead designer for our review to make sure that they're financially stable, to make sure that there's bonding, and that we can have the acceptable guarantees moving forward when we go to the RFP stage. Now, for the bonding capacity, as Ralph had mentioned earlier in the presentation, we do have expected total construction costs of between $1 billion and $1.25 billion. So we do have a bonding capacity of 50% of the total construction cost. Now, at this stage, again, with ensuring the financial viability of the teams, we're looking for a notarized letter from your sureties that you can take on 50% of the bonding capacity. So a letter committing that you have at least $625 million of bonding capacity. We do require that from high standard of surety companies with at least a rating of A-. And then lastly, in the pass-fail criteria, we have their vendor responsibility. Within the RFQ, you will see a section for conflicts of interest. We do ask if you have any even perceived conflicts of interest that you please do flag those. We also do our checks internally as well. And so we just want to make sure that we have the due diligence, working with the most ethical firms moving forward. Now, again, should the teams be able to pass those elements, we'll then have our comparative evaluation criteria. Now, these 5 items are items that are scored internally by the Port Authority, and those that score highly are then those that are selected for the shortlist. Now, again, 5 areas here for comparative, the first of which is the experience and past performance. What we're looking for, again, from lead contractor and lead designer is the past 15 years of experience, looking for 3 to 5 projects that you can demonstrate to us that are more weights for similar projects, again, those that may be APM projects, early civil infrastructure projects in the past 15 years, that you can discuss the costs, the complexity, if there's any been teaming works prior between the lead contractor and lead designer, that'd be a benefit to review. We're also looking to see if there's been experience in design build models or other alternative project delivery models. Another component is your work either with the Port Authority directly or other government agencies, so you have the understanding of the cooperation that'll be necessary. For the qualifications and experience of key personnel, as you'll see in the RFQ, we do have 6 key personnel that we'll ask for requirements for, such as the project manager, design manager, and a few others. Those we're looking to see that those key personnel have the requisite requirements, the necessary licenses, and similar to experience and past performance, that they have experience in similar projects in the past that they've maintained good work for. When it comes to project understanding and management approach, what you'll see in the RFQ is our project goals, and we want to make sure that the teams that move forward do understand those project goals and how they'll be implemented throughout the project. And again, the other component is how your team is going to successfully integrate not only together, and again, especially if you've worked together in the past, but with the Port Authority and those additional contracts that Ralph had mentioned earlier that help support AirTrain Newark replacement program. This project will have various interface points, so any experience with larger project various interface would be appreciated and be scored higher here. When it comes to customer experience, again, the overall purpose of the development for the AirTrain program is this section. And so we want to see that these teams have experience implementing world-class customer experience in other projects. Again, it doesn't have to be specific to APMs, but in other stations, airports, projects across the country, if not the world. And again, with this having so many connections to our Conrail, interface with third parties, we want to see that there's been experience with wayfinding and some of the connections in transit in the past. And then the last comparative evaluation criteria, but certainly not least, is our record of MBE, WBE, SDVOB, and LBE participation. As Glenessa mentioned, we do have various goals, expectations. This is one of our agency priorities, something we take very seriously. So in this section, we'll be reviewing how you've performed in the past when it comes to meeting participation goals on other projects, if you've met or exceeded those, But along with that, some of the outreach events that you've conducted to try to strategize how to increase your participation, as well as the key component of diversity within diversity and really sharing and having equity in the different firms that you work with. But with that, next, we want to touch upon a little bit the draft design build agreement. So I know Andrew had walked you through this helpfully before. And as mentioned, that we will be providing the draft design build agreement as an exhibit. It'll be Exhibit A to the request for qualifications later today. We thought this would be very helpful to the industry so that you could review the current risk profile and assess at this point in time. We do want to note the keyword here is that it is in draft form, and this is our current going out position. And so one of the things we do highly recommend is that with the draft design build agreement that you review, and there is in the RFQ a section for your comments to the design build agreement or any other comments about the project. We'll say this comment section is not evaluated. It's more so for the benefit of all parties, where the Port Authority will review and assess, and there is potential to make changes to the next version of the design build agreement as the first issuance with the RFP. So we definitely strongly encourage you to take a look, let us know, include any comments based on market-based commercial items that you're seeing, other comments and feedback, again, for our consideration as we'll be reviewing it, and be very helpful to have that input earlier on in the process. So we hope that the overview Andrew provided was also helpful to your teams on some of the risk profile. Then, having said all that, again, we will be shortlisting the teams, the most qualified teams in the RFQ stage for the request for proposals that will begin later this year. Again, as mentioned, we anticipate this period being about 6 to 8 months. Similar to the RFQ stage, we'll be asking for updated financial materials. This is going to be anticipated under an OSIP, but there is going to be some insurance requirements on the contractor. Again, updated surety letters that we'll be reviewing. Throughout this, we want to make sure that there is understanding of both the Port Authority and the different proposers' side. And so throughout the process, we will be having the collaborative dialogue meetings, as we call them. So touch points where the Port Authority meets individually with that proposer to discuss a various array of topics, such as design check-ins. It could be some of the commercial items in the design build agreement, technical components. We're also happy to have ad hoc collaborative dialogue meetings, again, to ensure that we receive the best proposals possible. So there'll be touch points of those throughout the RFP period. Another big element is the alternative technical concepts. As Ralph had noted, we do have over 30% design that we will be providing to teams for review. However, we don't want to stop creativity. We definitely encourage and recommend that everyone takes a look at the alternative technical concept process and makes any recommendations to the Port Authority about changing requirements. If you're seeing overall benefits to us, we definitely want to hear it and are open to the creativity if they're exceeding our requirements that we currently have to only improve the AirTrain Newark. And then with that, again, this is going to be assessed as a best value determination, where we will be reviewing the technical components as well as the price. So the Port Authority's process that we review the technical components first, score them. The evaluation committee is blind to the price, and the price is only opened after, so that we will really make a determination based on the overall value that is provided by proposers. So this will not be selected based on the lowest price, but the overall effort and the best proposal will be selected as the preferred proposer team. And then just a little bit of a continuation, a bit of a preview when it comes to the request for proposal phase. Again, we're going to be evaluating various technical components. And as you can see here on the screen, a few of the key ones that we'll be assessing once we move to the RFP phase. So again, one of the big elements is going to be the overall construction solution. So how you're going to be delivering excellence through all phases of the project and meeting those expected milestones that Ralph had walked us through. Again, making sure that customer experience is at the focus of this. We have appropriate messaging during both the construction phases and during the implementation of the APM system. That our participation plan is strong and has already some firms on board with the process to then carry forward in ways to potentially exceed even our participation goals. And again, ensuring diversity within diversity is at the forefront of that. We also want to ensure that there is the understanding of the interface points and that there's a plan engaged so that way the contractor for stations and Guideway works effectively with the system technology provider as well as the Port Authority to ensure all project management skills are carried forward. And then with that, we want to make sure that you put your best foot forward with how you innovate the system technology that we'll be selecting later this year and how to move that forward to meet all the performance and technical requirements. And then again, we'll be providing additional elements and factors in the RFP later this year that you'll be able to review for the shortlisted teams. Now, the last couple of elements is we do want to discuss the stipend. So when it does come to the request for proposals phase, again, the RFP will be sent directly to those shortlisted firms from the RFQ stage. And for those, there will be a stipend of $1.5 million for the unsuccessful proposers. So what's required to receive the stipend? You'll have to provide us with a compliant proposal and complete the entirety of the procurement process. Once reviewed, if you're not selected as preferred proposer, you will receive the $1.5 million stipend, and that'll be paid out 90 days from the selection of the preferred proposer when you're notified. And then lastly, the preferred proposer will not be receiving the stipend as they were awarded the contract. However, should we cancel for whatever reason, then they will be receiving the stipend also for their work, as we understand that these pursuits are very costly. We want to have everyone have some of the resources to make all the due diligence necessary to put together their proposals. And now one of the final elements I'll be working through, and again, I'm sure everyone's eager to see, is the overall timeline for the procurement process for both the RFQ stage and the RFP stage. So what you're seeing here is the overall schedule for the RFQ. Again, thank you for joining us today for today's industry briefing. As mentioned today, along with this event, we'll be issuing the request for qualifications as well as the design build agreement approximately 2 p.m. on our website. And again, I will be emailing all attendees today directly when it's placed with the link, so that way you can review as soon as it's available. We do have a deadline for submitting questions. Again, those will be sent directly to me as your point of contact, due on June 28th. And we'll be posting those responses, again, without anyone's names, but with the Port Authority's responses publicly on our website. We also may have a period of what we're calling clarifications, where once you receive your statement of qualifications, if we have any concerns, if we're not understanding, we may go back and forth a bit with some questions, so that way we score you appropriately, and if necessary, potentially request an interview. The SOQ date is due on July 11th. For the submittal to the Port Authority, we have a newer process called Bonfire. And so you'll be submitting your statements of qualification directly to the portal. It's free to join, so that we'll receive them by that deadline. Those will be due at 2 p.m. And then lastly, later this year, we'll be notifying the shortlisted respondents that they will advance to the RFP stage of this procurement opportunity. And then next, I'll be going over the RFP schedule for you all. Again, shortly after we notify the firms that they've been shortlisted, we will be moving forward with the RFP stage. Again, at that time, we'll be also notifying of who's been awarded the contract for the system technology, so the details of what you'll be designing and constructing for. We, again, with the big encouragement for MBE, WBE, and SDVOB participation, we will be having an outreach event to help increase participation. We'd also like to host a site visit, so that way you can have all questions and review the areas of work. Again, throughout the process, we'll be having our collaborative dialogue meetings. We'll have several throughout the process. And then our technical proposals and price proposals, they'll be due at different times, but close to each other, and those will be due in Q2 and Q3 of 2024. And with that, overall, between going to the board, limit negotiations, we will be awarding the contract for the stations and Guideway officially in Q4 of 2024. And then lastly, quickly want to go through the contact information, some of the resources you could use along with this presentation, my contact information. So when it comes to our outreach offices, they're always available and very helpful if you have any questions about events that are hosting, particularly that you like. If you don't want to reach out directly to me about the overall process, then we'll work to respond to you all. Our offices specific for the newer program that you can reach out to. Additionally, for some of our MBEs, WBs, and SDVOB firms, if you're not already certified, we do have links here about receiving certification, so you get onboarded and work with some primes as soon as possible. We do have a link and phone number there. As you can see, CertHelp at panyj.gov. I'm sure you have any questions about the overall process that we have online. We also have a specific website for the AirTrain Newark replacement program with the good data and details, some of the maps that Ralph had showed if you'd like more information there, along with a site for any specific questions regarding the AirTrain Newark replacement program. And then lastly, for procurement opportunities, of course, in addition to AirTrain Newark, there are various other procurement opportunities should you be interested. I've set up the link here, and again, those will be on our website, and I'll send directly to you all about other opportunities with deadlines in the Alternative Project Delivery Group. And there's also a link there again for our MB, WBE, SDVOB community where you could show your interest for this opportunity. So you can select the link, provide your contact information, your firm, the details, and that way it's known publicly that they can reach out that you're interested, and primes can reach out to you for potential opportunities if it's an area where they may need assistance. With that, again, as mentioned, a goal today will be we'll be issuing the request for qualifications along with the design build agreement. Again, along with that will be a video from today's industry outreach event. There'll be the actual presentation itself, along with the attendee list. And again, if anyone's looking for contractors or designers or what have you, strongly encourage you to take a list of the interested parties that joined today's event. Again, we greatly appreciate that. So that way you can review and potentially reach out as well if you're looking to form a greater team. And with that, again, there'll be no question and answer period at today's session. However, you do have the ability to send questions about this opportunity directly to me as your procurement contact person. Again, as you can see here are my contact details. Again, you can reach me at rpinto@panyj.gov. And with that, you'll be able to reach out to me. Again, questions that you send over my way, we'll be responding publicly on our website, so that way everyone receives the answers at the same time. And again, I'll be emailing this group when they're available. Additionally, if you have the Bonfire platform, you'll automatically get notified when questions and answers are posted. So I'd recommend going through that process so you know instantly that there's new information available, if there's any addendum to this process, and you have that right away. I'm going to encourage everyone to reach out. Please ask any and all questions. And again, we'll be posting those with the answers, but we will not share any of your private information. They will be anonymously posted with our responses. With that, we greatly appreciate all of your time today and your interest in the opportunity. Thank you for reaching out and taking time out of your day to join us. Again, along with my fellow panelists, we greatly thank you for today, and we hope to receiving your statements of qualification for this opportunity. We think this program will be wonderfully placed, strong competition, so we hope to hear from all of you. With that, again, feel free to reach out, and thank you very much for all of your time. Take care.